what should be done to improve spring games in college football? And go to Off the Hook Sports right now and you can vote on it. I've got 4 options for you. Should it be an exhibition versus another team, either in the SEC, an FCS school, something like that? Should you get rid of them? Just straight up get rid of them. Tennessee didn't have one last year, and they went 11-2 and finished number 6 in the nation. Are they fine as they are? Is there any reason to change anything? And lastly, something else. Anything else? Do you have a suggestion? If you have a suggestion, comment on your own, please. Right now, exhibition versus another team is dominating, getting 78% of the vote on our poll question. What do you think should be done? Austin Ireland has jumped in and he says FCS. I assume, Austin, you mean a game versus an FCS school. There's been a lot of suggestions for that. Here's the thing I'm going to bring up to you guys about these FBS versus FCS games. A lot of people have suggested making them exhibition games in some form rather than a regular season game as they are. Here's the problem with doing that. And I understand the point, and I totally understand it. I think it's great for both schools. It's kind of a tune-up game, I guess, if you will. But the problem is these FCS games are needed to be regular season official games. If you make them exhibition games, you will decrease fan support, and you will have to sell the tickets for less, so you won't generate the same revenue. That's not a big deal if you're the FBS team hosting the FCS team. That's a huge deal if you're the FCS team, because what I don't think you guys understand is that the FCS teams, one of the ways, and the lower group of 5 teams, one of the ways they finance their football programs is teams like Tennessee paying them millions of dollars to come to Neyland Stadium and lose in convincing fashion. That's just how it works. You're not going to be able to pay that much to do that to them to host. You're not going to be able to pay as much to host them for an exhibition game, whether it be a spring game or some people have suggested a week 0 preseason game for every team in college football. That's going to be a problem. I think I understand the sentiment behind it, but I just don't think it's going to work. I think a more effective way is actually an exhibition game versus another school on your level. Tennessee versus Georgia, Tennessee versus Florida, whatever. People would worry about injuries. You're not going to have to worry about injuries. No one's going to play that hard. It's just a way to gauge where you are heading into the summer. I think personally, they should do an exhibition game where you play another team on your caliber to see where you are relative to where you were last year. I think that's the best way to do it. Now, there are others. When I brought up something else, there are other ways there are other suggestions you could bring up. There are other things you could do. One of them, some people have suggested, make it an off-campus game, which if it's an exhibition game against another school, it should be an off-campus game. Totally agree with that. Make more entertainment with it. With Midnight Madness, with different sports, you have all these stunts that people do, these dunk contests and things like that. Do like a skills competition. Maybe that'll work for college football. Have top-notch performers come, music stars, people like that. Those are all things. Lump it with another thing happening over the weekend. I know Tennessee has lumped the spring game with baseball series in the past. Do something like that. Make it a full weekend event. There's obviously ways you can make it more entertaining. Particularly, that would be relative to the school itself, which would bring in a lot of visitors, which would be Tennessee has a lot of visitors coming in for the spring game. That would entertain a lot of them even more than it would. Just a lot of different things you could. Or maybe you think it's fine the way it is, or you should just do away with it. Maybe do away with it just to avoid injuries. A couple other suggestions. Travis, you said play Carson Newman like they did in the days of old. Haha, Travis, I don't know if you know. I'm going to look it up right now just to be clear, but I believe Tennessee's largest blowout win in history was against Carson Newman. And it was the first Tennessee team. Yep, 1914. The very first Tennessee team to ever win a championship. The very first Tennessee team to go undefeated. I'm sorry, the second team. The first team to go undefeated was in 1896. They went 4-0. The second team to ever go undefeated, the first to ever win a championship, and the first to ever beat Vanderbilt, the 1914 Tennessee Vols, led by Zora A. Clevenger. They went 9-0. Their first game that year, they beat Carson Newman 89-0. Maybe bring it back. Hey, last time if they blow out Carson Newman again, they could probably do the same thing with Josh Heupel's offense. And at that point, you might see another undefeated season. Tennessee went 9-0 that year, won the SIAA championship. There was no bowl game or anything like that. But definitely the first great Tennessee football team in history. Another quote by Travis, Florida looked like hot garbage in their spring game. Heard a lot about that. Actually, there's some transfer portal news we're going to get to, and we're going to talk about how Florida is relevant to that later in the show. So please stay tuned for that because there's a lot to talk about with Florida. And you brought up, Travis, like an NFL preseason game. Yeah, I'm with you. You can make the spring game like an NFL preseason game. But again, that's where it should be. You should be competing with teams on your level. It's not like the NFL plays a CFL team for preseason games. They play other teams on their level to gauge really where they are. I think that's more effective than playing an FCS school. I think the FCS schools should be regular season games because I like seeing those smaller schools stay afloat, and they stay afloat by getting their butts whipped once a year by a Power 5 program. Just how it works. So please hit that like and subscribe button. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Please go to Twitter to vote on that. We will monitor the polling throughout the day. Got a lot to get to. About to take a 2-minute break. When we come back, a new recruiting calendar has been approved, and some recruiting rules changes have been approved. Mr. Jones says you can't spell garbage without AR. I assume that's a reference to Anthony Richardson. Well played. Well played.